I don't think the president is above the law. No person in this country, no matter how high or powerful, is above the law. It has been a particular honor for me to serve on the Court of Appeals for these past 15 years because it has given me the opportunity to use whatever talent I have to serve my country by upholding the rule of law. And there is nothing that is more important for our republic than the rule of law.
The Supreme Court has finally released its ruling on this long-awaited case, saying that Trump has immunity from official acts.
No one's above the law. A presidency would not be a monarchy, and it specified all the ways that under the Constitution, the president is not above the law. No one is above the law in the United States of America.
I mean, honestly, and he'd never do it because he's a decent man, but if Joe Biden decided to use SEAL Team 6 to go after his political rivals, according to this case, he may be justified in doing that. At least it would have to go to the Supreme Court to decide if he was justified in doing that.
You know, I try to find the right words at times, right? Tasteful words, since my mom watches my videos, but the Supreme Court of the United States have lost their damn mind.
John, just one quick question before I let you both go. What would have happened with President Nixon if this ruling were in place?
This to me appears to certainly influence the existing law on presidential conduct, what's available, evidentiary speaking. Amy Coney Barrett said she didn't think that it should be so restricted as the decision of the court itself was. So I think that Nixon would have survived. I think he would have walked.
Now let's do a quick recap, right, of their recent decisions. So they've ruled that homeless people can't sleep outside and can be arrested for the crime of, not being able to afford a home.
Was the case involving homelessness and loitering laws. The Supreme Court is permitting cities to enforce bans on homeless people sleeping outside, even if shelter space is lacking. And this ruling comes as a rising number of people in the United States are without a permanent place to live.
They've ruled that the President of the United States can't forgive student debt.
Biden administration plan to forgive federal student loans does not hold up. They're blocking that. They're agreeing with the lower court that that was not within their congressional authority. Again, this is the case brought by the state, saying that the people who were servicing the loans from within the states would be harmed by the student loan forgiveness plan. And so, yes, the borrowers do not have standing here, but the court is saying that the states do.
They've ruled that women don't have autonomy over their own bodies.
Because for 54 years, they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I did it, and I'm proud to have done it. They wanted to get it back, right? You wouldn't have that. There would be no question. Nobody.
They've ruled that the EPA can't regulate water, threatening the legitimacy of hundreds of regulations that protect our environment, health, and so much more.
Talk us through the potential ramifications here.
Could be significant for a number of agencies, Katie, including financial regulators like the Securities and Exchange Commission and climate and environmental regulators like the EPA. This is a doctrine that was established all the way back in 1984, which essentially gave the power of agencies like this the ability to interpret laws that were vague, which frankly, a lot of the legislation that actually comes out of Congress can indeed be vague. And they would use their own in-house experts to interpret that law and apply it accordingly. In the court now overturning this today essentially takes that power away from the regulators, which means much more of this is going to have to be litigated in court and ultimately decided by the court rather than the agencies themselves. So think about things that the EPA has put out, for example, including auto emissions standards, for example, that could potentially be challenged. The way that the Securities and Exchange Commission actually interprets securities law, which of course is almost 100 years old at this point and has to be applicable to new developments in the financial system. It really limits the ability of regulators.
And to round things out, they've ruled that the president can have absolute power, meaning he could go ahead and assassinate his political opponent if he wants.
I would administer justice without respect to persons, that I would do equal right to the poor and to the rich, and that I would carry out my duties under the Constitution and the laws of the United States.
Presidency would not be a monarchy, and it specified all the ways that under the Constitution, the president is not above the law. No one is above the law in the United States of America. The Constitution is not above the law. No one's above the law in the United States.
But sure, let's run 26 more ads on how Biden descends stairs instead of outlining the real and imminent threat to every tenet of our democracy. In the most layman of layman terms, right? Like, we can put it with pictures and crayons if needed. In 250 years, 250, not a single president has had to ask for immunity until the 45th.
And I feel that as a president, you have to have immunity. Very simple. And if you don't, as an example, if this case were lost on immunity, and I did nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong. I'm working for the country. And I worked on very hard on voter fraud because we have to have free elections. We have to have strong voters. We have to have free elections. Those two things almost above all. And we found tremendous voter fraud. We have a list of it. We have some findings if you want it. The press doesn't like reporting it, but we found tremendous voter fraud, determinative voter fraud. But we worked on that. That's what I was doing.
Why? Ask yourself, why is that? You know, you think it's just a coincidence that the man facing countless indictments for his own conduct in office is seeking refuge in the conservative court that he stacked, and they happen to rule in favor of giving presidents free rein to wage whatever hell they want without reproach.
I think this term has been a fractious one for the court. I think they've tried to issue some decisions where there's unanimity or consensus, but the fact of many different concurrences and dissents suggests that there are still a lot of tensions about how decisions get made and what the rationales for those decisions will be. I will note that the Chief Justice and his majority seem to be calling the three female dissenters hyperbolic, fear-mongering harpies at one point. He doesn't call them harpies specifically, but he does say that they're fear-mongering. But I think the dissent is right that the long-term implications of this decision will be far-reaching and will be incredibly consequential. And it's worth thinking about this case and this decision in the context of the decisions that we received last week concerning the administrative state.
I think it's just a coincidence that the Chevron deference, one of the few remaining safeguards against Project 2025 and a complete corporate lobbyist takeover of our government, was ruled unconstitutional, just as a tyrant who, if elected, will be given unmitigated immunity.
They were talking about after. Well, nothing has to do with after I left. It was during the time. And that was what they really focused on today during the appeal. And they concede that, and everybody concedes that. And if it's during the time, you have absolute immunity.
We're no longer sleepwalking into a disaster. We're fucking barreling towards it at a full throttle Sha'Carri Richardson speed. And yet, yeah, after a disastrous 90 minutes, I'm not going to beat around the bush. We get articles calling for Biden to step down from the very same sources who have failed to call for the felon-in-chief to do the same to preserve democracy. We are, and I'm not being facetious here, in a terrible position. Winning this election has never been so important. If Trump were to win, the Supreme Court just gave him the go-ahead to do whatever the hell he wants.
It is worse to use the cloak of presidential authority to commit ordinary crimes for which the rest of us would go to jail than it is to do things that are purely personal. So the sliver that has been left to Jack Smith, that is taking the threads of this indictment and in a hearing before Judge Chutkan trying to show which ones, like contacts with Rudy Giuliani or certain discussions with state officials, which ones are purely private, that's really a fig leaf. It is simply a way for the court to tap itself on the shoulder and say, we're not granting absolute immunity. I beg to differ. For all practical purposes, this is absolute immunity. It's dangerous.
Now, do we need a reminder of what he's planning again?
And the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.